Welcome to the Green Drinks July YouTube replay. Tonight we have Christina Lalli from Nouveau Monde, which is the first all-electric mine in the world. They are from Quebec, Canada. Enjoy this replay.
So tonight I'm pleased to welcome our speaker, Christina Lalli. She is the Director of Investor Relations at Nouveau Monde. Has over 15 years of investment relations experience in both the mining and public utilities industries, having worked for a number of Canadian public companies in various senior investor relations roles. Most recently, Ms. Lalli was the Director of Investor Relations of Osisko Metals Incorporated, where she was instrumental in establishing new contacts and developing important relationships within the capital markets in Canada, the US and Europe. She was also previously part of the investment relations team at Osisko Mining Corporation, an important success story within Canadian mining history. She might be able to answer questions on that too later. She's a longtime member of the Canadian Investor Relations Institute and is a graduate of the Ivy School of Business, University of Western Ontario, designated as Certified Professional Investor Relations. She'll be speaking about the full electrification of the mine's operations and how graphite is helping to transform the electric vehicle industry. We also have with us Nicolas Tremblay, so Nick Tremblay, who is from Nouveau Monde. Apparently he is known as the battery expert, so he'll be able to handle all kinds of questions after the session, and I'm sure that there'll be lots of them. So before I turn it over to Christina, we want to show you a video. So I'm going to share my screen. All right, share my screen, and then we'll go from there. If I can find it. So this is us. It's a 2-minute video.
Dear Elon, my name is Eric, CEO and founder of Nouveau Monde Graphite. I'm writing you this letter to tell you we found millions of tons of graphite, enough to produce trillions of pencils. But these days, who needs that many pencils?
What we really need is a change towards cleaner energy and more massive lithium-ion batteries that can drive themselves. We want to partner up with the EV industry to supply our kick-ass graphite to you guys so you can continue the electric revolution.
My English isn't perfect, but our product is. So Rick, what does it say?
99.95% pure.
Battery grade, but I guess you expected that. Thanks, Rick.
You got it, Rick.
What you didn't expect is that we are building the first all-electric open-pit mining project in the world. Zero-emission graphite. And the best part? We're located in Quebec, Canada. Bonjour, les voisins. Want to know more? Just give us a call.
Yep, that's a wrap, guys.
It's gonna call. It's gonna call. Hey, good job, guys. Any minute. I'm pretty sure about that. Pretty sure. Eric speaking.
I like this part.
I love it. You'll have to put Eric up as the next James Bond.
Yeah. So I want to know, Christina, did Elon Musk ever call?
No, so we haven't been able to speak to Elon just yet, although we have been having some pretty interesting conversations with the Tesla group. So the marketing or the procurement teams that are scouting to purchase the raw materials or the battery minerals that are needed for the batteries. And, you know, although this video in the industry, everybody knows Elon Musk, so it was normal for us, you know, for the video to be focused on Elon and Tesla. But the reality is that in the last 6 to 12 months, we've been having some really important conversations with multiple automobile makers and the large ones, the important ones. So, you know, what we'll learn as we discuss Nouveau Monde, the great thing or the interesting thing is that, you know, there's a worldwide big push for the electrification of transportation. All the automobile makers have publicly announced their targets. So, you know, number of new models and number of EV models within their fleets over the next few years. You know, some targets are 2023, 2025, or 2030. Whatever it may be, there will be an increase in EV cars on the road. And the automobile makers are not only building their cars, but building their batteries. And so they look to companies like us to secure the raw materials for the supply chain. So we haven't gotten a call from him, but we've been speaking to some of his colleagues. Let's just leave it at that.
All right, it's up. You can share your screen there at any point in time if you want.
Okay.
The floor is yours.
Great. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for joining, first of all. You know, this is the new way in which we're marketing these days. This is a really great story to tell, actually. It's one of the reasons why I joined the company back in October of 2019. So I'm going to take myself off camera because I'm just a little worried about the bandwidth that I have here. So I'll stop video and I'll share my presentation. And Raymond, I believe we are recording because I think I have the record button on my end. So I've hit record and it'll save to the cloud, I believe, is what it says.
Like we're good to go for the recording.
Okay, good.
And we're getting all those up on YouTube, everybody. I've just posted one of our ones from April. So we'll definitely get this one up as well. Over to you, Christina.
Okay, let me make sure I've got the right one. Yes, I do. Okay. So Nouveau Monde basically has gone public or has come to be several years now. Eric, that you saw in the video, is our president CEO. He's a young guy. He's a firm believer in renewable energies and sustainability. He had a vision early on that he wanted to be involved in the renewable space, or, you know, the EV space. And in Quebec, there is a very large graphite mine, natural flake mine, belonging to a French conglomerate, but they will cease production by the end of next year. So my boss, or Eric, being a geophysicist, had the brilliant idea of flying a geosurvey in proximity to that existing mine, because what better way to find a new deposit, or basically increase your chances of finding a deposit, but to fly a geosurvey close to an existing one. So that's what he did basically, and made a discovery of our deposit. So the MATAWINIE deposit, located about an hour and a half from Montreal, not too far, and a beautiful drive north for anyone who ever wants to visit. And so we drilled out the property, and the deposit basically grew in size. And as it stands, MATAWINIE is the largest graphite flake deposit in the Western world. Which is quite important. We expect to go into full-scale production by mid to end 2022. So that is quite soon when you think about you know, the cycle or mine cycle from discovery to production. It's quite rapid, actually. And at that point in time, it will be the largest graphite operation in the Western world, and most particularly an all-electric open pit mine. So for any of you that are familiar with mining in a general sense, it's not the first time that a mine will run all electric. There are currently a few underground mines running all electric, but it will be the first open pit. And we're able to do so because we will be connected to Hydro-Quebec's line. So we'll be running on renewable hydropower. And our fleet, so all of the mining fleet will be running on, there'll be electrified fleets, so haulers and diggers or whatnot. So all running on lithium-ion batteries. In the next few weeks or a few months, hopefully we have our fingers crossed. We should have some interesting news out on who will be supplying us with those electrified fleets. So that's really exciting. Not many people know, but they do exist. These 300-ton haulers do exist in the world. We're not too familiar with them here in Canada, but they're out there, and so we hopefully we'll have some exciting news out. So by the year of end or by the end of year 5 of full-scale production, rather, we expect to be fully all electric. And at that time, we'll be able to certify to the market, more importantly to our potential offtake partners, so the Teslas of this world, that we will be able to offer them a zero carbon or carbon neutral product. And this will be the first of its kind where graphite is concerned. And this is a really big deal, so we're really proud of that. And of course, being Canadian, we're happy to set the stage, for such a development. So, I started off with this slide here because we're really well positioned in the landscape, the world landscape. So at full scale production, we'll be able to produce 100,000 tons per day of flake, and the mine will live for 26 years, so to 2045. And you could see there all of those companies that we list in this western portion of the world, so Europe and the Americas, whether it be battery makers or the automobile makers, they're all within reach. They're all at our doorstep because of the location of the mine site next to ports or close to ports. We're able to easily ship out our product basically around the world. So this is really exciting for us. I'm gonna just go through the market because I think since maybe most of us on the call are generalists, it's my experience as I go out and market the company. We know about the EV revolution, and I'm sure many of you on the line are quite savvy where technology is concerned. I've invited my colleague Nick on the line because he is our tech guru and he knows everything about batteries and all the alternatives. So he'll be able to give me a hand as well for any particular questions. But in a general sense, I'd just like to talk about why we're in the graphite space and why it's so important in the EV space. So just generally, graphite is a non-metal which has many metal properties. The reason why it's used particularly in the anode of a lithium-ion battery is because it's an excellent conductor of heat and electricity. In a general sense, it has the highest natural strength and stiffness of any material, and it can maintain a strength or a stability for temperatures in excess of close to 4,000 degrees Celsius, which makes it very resistant and also resistant to chemical attacks. Traditionally, what it's used for is still in the steel making or steel industry. Basically, it's a component in bricks that are used to line the blast furnaces, or what are known to be refractories. So, when we look at these charts here, we see that the refractories make up 35% of graphite use, along with some other particular uses that we see off to the left of the circle. But the space that we're interested in, or the sector we're interested in, and that's growing at quite a rapid pace since 2012, 20% increase per annum, is the battery space, so the lithium-ion battery space. And so that's where we plan to be. And our goal is really to be a fully integrated company as well. So, you know, we are a mining company. We will be pulling ore out of the ground and producing natural graphite flake, but we will go further and, you know, use the equipment to micronize and spherinize that flake. So we'll produce spheronized graphite, and that's your basic anode material, basically, is that you could get into the market at that point. But we also have plans to go further down that supply chain and purify it and coat it, end up with a fully complete product, which will allow us to sell, you know, directly to automakers. And also, once purified, produce value-added products of different types. You know, why the lithium-ion battery or the renewable space? You know, we find lithium-ion batteries in just about everything these days, such as cell phones, cameras, laptops, the power tools, of course, the EVs and grid storage. So the EVs and grid storage is really what's growing at a rapid rate and really going to have an effect on the supply and demand of graphite. We know that there'll be approximately 553 gigawatt hours of battery capacity being built in North America and Europe as we speak. Of course, we see a lot of mega factories being built, just like the one that Tesla has built in Nevada. And because there aren't many graphite mines around or outside of China, and because it's not every graphite mine that has the necessary,
Dear Elon, my name is
the necessary quality to produce anode material, both the EU and the US have declared graphite a supply critical mineral. Excuse me. So again, why is graphite so important to the EV space and lithium-ion batteries? And we can see here that, sorry, I'm losing my voice.
All good. Take a second to have a drink. We are green drinks after all.
Yeah, I think it's the heat. So in a lithium-ion battery, you have the anode and the cathode portion. And within the anode portion, you've 100% of the anode is made from graphite. And so Elon Musk himself has been quoted saying that the battery should have actually been called a nickel graphite battery. And we give an example here. You know, for a Tesla Model 3, you've got about 90 kilograms of graphite found within that model. I mentioned China quickly earlier, but you know, the graphite industry has basically been dominated by China. When we think of just the graphite flake coming out of the mines, which is that stage 1 mining, China produces about 65% of the flake that's necessary. And when we talk about going into the anode material, they produce quite a large portion of the spherical graphite, but more importantly, they produce 100% of the purified graphite. So that's once you get to the secondary processing. So 100% of the purified graphite, which means basically when you're in a situation like we're living or lived, you know, in March, right at the get-go of COVID. Actually, we lived it in March, but China was impacted, you know, as of December. What COVID has really highlighted, and you know, the market has known this before, because for a large part, the graphite prices have sort of been, you know, held hostage by what China's doing. So because graphite was primarily used for steel making, you know, if China's economy slowed down, it'd have an impact on the graphite prices, so negatively. If China decided to flood the market with graphite product, it would also have an impact, negative impact on prices. What COVID has highlighted is that, in times like these, when China was forced to shut down their plants, just like us, no one going to work, they stopped exporting product, their ports were shut down. It really stalled and had a quite a large impact on graphite supply, of course, but even more so on the EV sector. So, for all of you that follow closely, you probably have seen some headlines whereby, Tesla, it won't be able to get out its numbers of a certain model of car because there was a lag in supply available for the batteries. I believe I read the same thing on BMW. And so there were a few of them to make those announcements. So the world knows that we can no longer rely on China for graphite or anode material supply. And what's more is that we know that the way in which China produces graphite is not necessarily or by any means done in a sustainable manner or in an ethical manner. So, when it comes to purification of graphite, for example, they use a very heavy chemical process, which pollutes, their waters and their land. They're not known for doing proper remediation or managing, their wastewater or tailings. So they've had some heavy legislation slammed on them in which they've got to change the way they do things for the better, of course, but that's not done overnight. So a lot of their mines or plants have had to turn down a notch or just shut down entirely. Automobile makers, of course, just like, we want to be good corporate citizens, we're proud that we'll be producing this carbon neutral anode material that will be able to supply the market. Automobile makers have also themselves vowed that they'll be purchasing their raw materials, excuse me, purchasing the raw materials from an ethical source. And so, that being true, they will no longer want to heavily rely on China going forward. And again, that creates a nice little niche for us because we now really become a viable partner to these groups. This slide I included, it's quite interesting because we're starting to see that important growth outside of China. So for all of our research here at Nouveau Monde, and for any of you that are interested in the battery, of course you're interested in the battery space, we rely on a research house called Benchmark Minerals. They're out of the UK and they are solely focused or do research on battery minerals or the battery space. And so what they say or what their statistics show is that going forward we're going to see two big pushes or cycles, if you will, in 2024 and 2029 in the lithium ion battery space. This slide here is a depiction of mega factories. So just like the Tesla's mega factory in Nevada, this is a tracker following all of the mega factories that will be coming online. So the colors or the shading of the colors depict the years and how much capacity that those mega factories will offer us. So you've got US, Europe, and Asia outside of China. And, it's really interesting to see. And I suppose it's a reflection of the conversations that we've been having with some of the main players. We see that growth really now starting to occur in Europe and in the US as well. So total capacity for mega factories last year was 445.6 gigawatt hours. But if we look to 2029, then we're well over 2,000 gigawatt hours. So there's going to be a lot of growth going forward outside of China. And then here we just zoom in on the raw materials that are needed. So in your lithium ion battery, what's essential is lithium, graphite, cobalt, and nickel. In the headlines, probably in the last year or so, we've been seeing cobalt actually get quite a bit of attention as automakers secure their cobalt supply in the space. So we expect to see the same thing beginning in the graphite space. So by 2029, we expect the demand to really shift and grow over 480% for graphite alone, necessary in the building of these lithium-ion batteries. And here we simply talk about supply shortage by 2023. So we've got the columns there. The yellow line, interestingly enough, Benchmark Minerals was nice enough to include the impacts of COVID. So the yellow line really doesn't mean much, but it's basically pre-COVID and post-COVID. So Q4 2019 and Q1 2020. But regardless of that, the trend is the same. We see that by 2023, we're really going to start feeling a shortage in the graphite supply. Whereby if we look at the projection for natural flake demand exceeding global supply by 400 tons, and it's clear that we'll need new production to come online. These are just some of the headlines. I mean, I'm sure all of you read on a daily basis and follow up and see what's happening out there. I do, of course, and I just found it really interesting. So I included these, knowing that you guys will take away the PowerPoint. So if you want to do a bit more research on what's happening out in the world, we know that Tesla struck a deal with Glencore, which is a big miner, for the supply of cobalt. What's interesting, although, is that Glencore will get the cobalt from a junior mining company. So, that's pretty cool. They're not in graphite, but they're a junior. And so we're starting to see that, there's the lines are blurring between the EV space and the mining industry. BMW is going to buy their cobalt supply from an Australian EV battery maker, and Volkswagen has invested a large amount of money, 450 million euros, in battery manufacturing joint venture with Northvolt. So I'm going to get into just a bit of detail about the project, but just so you'll know a bit more of what we're going to be doing and what our mine is like. So again, this is just a snapshot geologically. MATAWINIE, the deposit that we did our feasibility study on, is what you see there in red. Just a few months ago, we were able to press release an increase in our mineral resource. So our resources grew in size. And in fact, that press release in general wasn't very important, perhaps for mining investors, but the message was really important to potential offtake clients, automobile makers, people that we've been having conversations with. If you see all that's in that lilac or purple color, those are all mineralized zones. And so, the whole property is quite mineralized. And what's great about the mineralization that we see from the deposit is that the quality is quite homogeneous across the deposit. So, it's important because the quality is there. We're able to reach over 94% purity. When we go into purification, we'll be able to hit 99%. So the anode material, that's how you qualify it, by level of purity. And if you can't get to that level, then you just can't sell anode material, basically. So, you know, our message to the market is that although our current project is quite robust, 26 years at 100,000 tons per year, again, the largest of its kind in the Western world, there's a lot of room to grow. So we know that for a Volkswagen, for example, you know, if we were able to produce 300,000 tons per year, then they would willingly scoop it all up, because that's the need, basically. We also have learned that, you know, they need to, of course, offset their carbon footprint or carbon credits. So for every carburant car, fuel car that they sell, they need to sell 3 electric vehicles to offset their carbon footprint. So, you know, the need is growing, and it's going to grow quite rapidly as we continue into the future. This is to simplify things for those of you curious about how to produce or how anode material is produced. Every step that you take in the production line adds value to the product. So for us, every step that we take offers us a larger profit margin. So you start with flake graphite concentrate that comes out of the mine, what we have been producing successfully. So unlike our peers in the space, we're the only junior to be running a demonstration plant. So we understood early on that in order to successfully get into the market, the graphite market, it's one thing to produce graphite, but in order to solidify an offtake partner, because graphite doesn't trade on a spot market, but it's really between the supplier and the offtake to negotiate a price. But clients require a very specific recipe for each one of their needs. And so you need to be able to supply them with some sort of sample so that they can qualify the product and test it within their applications. So it's been 1.5 years now that we've been running our demo plant successfully. We've produced graphite flakes successfully. We've been sending batches out to potential clients. So still in the traditional sector, the steel making industry, for example. But we announced, which was quite a big announcement in February, that at that same demo plant, we've been able to successfully produce spharonized graphite. And so this is the next step in getting to the anode material. And so now we've been producing smaller batches of that spharonized graphite. We will head into purification. We have plans to build a demo plant for the secondary transformation, and that's purification. And then later on, coating and thermal treatment. So we're quite lucky to have in-house experts and scientists, if you will, that are already, you know, looking forward to the coating and thermal treatment. The purification, again, what's going to set us apart. So if you recall, 100% of purified graphite comes currently from China. You know, once we'll be operating that demo plant, and we feel that by the end of the first quarter next year, we'd be able to produce some first batches of purified graphite. The main difference is that we are going to be using a very innovative hydrothermal process. It'll be the first of its kind. And so it will be the first for a junior Canadian mining company to be able to produce purified graphite using this innovative technology that is not heavy in the use of chemicals. So it's really something to be proud of, and we're really excited. So you guys, if you stay in tune with what we're doing, there'll be some major milestones that we want to meet in the next 6 months. I've included some photos of what the plant looks like inside and out. So that's the equipment that you see to the left. This is your typical milling equipment. We're using proven technologies. Our team is staffed with experienced graphite operators. So that other mine that I told you about at the beginning of the presentation, owned by the French conglomerate, well, since they're going to be ceasing their operations by the end of next year, we've been really lucky to have been able to poach some of their key personnel. So, you know, we have highly experienced people, whether it be in operations or marketing, the executive team and finance. So this is really helpful, especially where marketing is concerned, when you need to go out and, you know, find and negotiate with potential offtake clients. Again, here, this is where we've added the micronizing and spheronizing equipment at our demo plant. So, you know, from an investor point of view, the conversations that I've had marketing since, you know, we announced in February that we're producing spheronized graphite, the demo plant is really important because we're running all of the equipment, or the same equipment that will be running once we get to a commercial size. And that really de-risks our projects because we're able to run a circuit the same way in which we'll be running it later on. And in the mining space, you know, once you get into production, you start the big machine up. You know, you run the risk of all kinds of things, unexpected things happening, or your equipment breaking down, or just not running the way you plan. And then you have, you know, maintenance shutdowns, but then you could possibly have shutdowns for something you didn't expect. So the demo plant's running well. You know, obviously we are trying to maximize its output and efficiencies, but the fact that we have one running has really been important for us and for our shareholders as well. Oops, what is happening here? Okay. So about an hour from Saint Michel des Saints, where we have our mine site and our future commercial mill site, is a place called BECANCOUR. And you'll see here on the photo that we've got this blue box, our NMG land. So we've got an option on 200,000 square meters of land in an industrial park. So this is an industrial area, which gives us access to all of the major infrastructure that would be necessary, so rail and port. Again, we'll be bringing in low-cost, renewable hydro powers, so Hydro Quebec. There's skilled labor in the area, of course, but what's most important, which we've blotted out in with this green box right here, because we can't give any names right now until it's officially announced, but we're in this area because it's strategic for us. So again, once we begin producing purified graphite at a small scale demo plant. So this is the site of a large scale plant in the future, but we will have a demo plant so we can begin producing in the first quarter of next year. In the hydrothermal process, you need chlorine. So it's one of the key ingredients. And in this industrial park, not too far from where we'll be, is a chemical supplier. So, you know, we're really into the circular economy, of course. We're an example of that. You know, we'll be producing a carbon neutral battery grade material. We'll also be running all electric. The interesting thing with our future partnership, once it solidifies, is that, you know, we'll require chlorine from a supplier an end product or byproduct through our processing is saline water. So this is something that they actually will require. So there'll be some give and take, and it'll be a great partnership. So, you know, we're looking forward to this coming to fruition in the next few months. I'm sure you guys, of course, being in the tech space, renewable space, you've been hearing more and more about these ESG principles. So ESG standing for environment, social, and governance. Of course, because we're firm believers in sustainability, and of course, we'll be operating all electric. By default, we have very strong ESG principles. So again, we'll be a carbon neutral operation using low cost renewable energy. We've also will be using some innovative practices for the way in which we manage our tailings. So that's all of the residual muck that, you know, is a result of our mining at the mine site. On a social aspect, we do have towns situated around the mine and mill site, local job creation. We've actually created and we've started a DEP, so a diploma for skills training. It's the first of its kind in partnership with 2 universities. And so we'll be taking in cohorts of, I believe, 20 to 25 students per session, and training them. Some of the training will actually occur at our mill site, and once they've graduated, they'll actually end up with a diploma, a DEP, and you know, we're just trying to basically train or educate the future, because of course in our industry there is a lack of skilled labor. There's also where our mine site is, it's big on forestry. So we do have a partnership with that industry as well for this DEP. So, you know, we're doing as much as we can for the host communities in the area. And of course, governance goes without saying, you know, the business ethics that we have in place and codes of conduct. And of course, Canada being a renowned mining jurisdiction. So we really come full circle, you know, from electric mining to producing the carbon neutral product. We will be able to produce value added products. It brings us right to the anode material, which, you know, we'll be using once we have our electric fleet running on lithium ion batteries. So full circle or circular economy, if you will. Carbon neutral sustainable development just kind of repeats what I've been speaking about. So I won't go too much into this slide, you know, except for the point here, the progressive land reclamation. Again, we're going to be implementing an innovative co-disposal tailings management and backfilling process or technology. So I won't really get into the why invest in Nouveau Monde, although, you know, I guess it speaks to itself. I know we're not here for the purpose of investment, but, you know, it is a really great story. I haven't really gone into it in much detail, especially not the economics. But, you know, what's important to keep in mind is that we will be an all-electric open pit mine running on renewable energy. Within the first 5 years of production, producing a zero emission or carbon neutral battery anode material. Will be the first junior company outside of, or any company for that matter, outside of China to be producing purified graphite. Will be coming to commercial production by the end of 2022. And that's right before the next big wave in the EV revolution. I recall Benchmark Minerals, the next wave stated for 2023-24. So we really come to market just before that next big wave. We are, of course, dedicated to our ESG principles and sustainability. And of course, you know, just like any publicly trading company, what's important is that we expect from robust profit margins. We've got great support in terms of institutional investors, great support from our Quebec-based institutions. I assume where you guys are located, there is also a big push in the electrification of transportation. But here in Quebec, you know, we read about it every day. There's just such a big push for electrifying our transportation. And the Quebec government has vocally, you know, said that they will support our project and try and move us forward, you know, as quickly as possible. And so, you know, we see that really through them. And I believe my colleague Nick is also on the line, and I'm not sure if he's unmuted, but I will invite all of you to join me. And I'm opening up the chat box, and we can.
Yeah, we've got a few questions.
You are. Oh, Nick, is that you?
Yeah. No, it's.
Okay, it's Nick Head from SmartNet Alliance that's going to moderate the Q&A. So we've already captured all of the questions that have come through the chat box. So Nick is going to put it out to you, Christina, and to Nick Tremblay, and you can answer as Nick asks you the questions, and then we'll go to the rest of the group to see if there are other questions. Is that okay with you? Christina, Nick Tremblay?
Yeah, sure. Do you want me to give like just a quick introduction on my background?
Hello?
And
Yeah, sure. Do that.
yeah. Okay. Cool. So I was, you know, introduced as a battery expert guru, whatever, by Christina. It's great. I'm not so sure I would qualify myself as a guru, but you know, my background is an IT. I'm an IT manager. I work for the government, but I've been a shareholder in this company since day one. Okay, the company was listed on the Venture Exchange in January of 2013. We were back then an exploration company, so we had yet to discover this big graphite deposit. So I've been there since day one, and then over these years, I worked a little bit on the with Nouveau Monde. You know, with the government, it's great. I was able to take a year off from the government, and I worked for full time for Nouveau Monde during that time. So over the years, you know, I learned quite a bit about the battery technology, lithium-ion batteries, the chemistries, you know, the whole technology, Tesla, and the integration of the battery and the computer systems and all of that stuff. The battery market, what it takes to you know, produce anode material. It's quite complicated. You know, it's not natural. I mean, when someone, for example, an oil investor contemplates investing in the battery sector, in the battery materials, it's not as easy as, you know, you just drill a hole in the ground and then oil springs up and then you sell it on the market on the spot price. It's not that easy. So I learned quite a bit. I mean, I'm just hoping that I'll be able to answer all of your questions. And if I don't have an answer, but perhaps Raymond can share my email address with you guys, and then I'll be, you know, I'll be more than happy to find an answer to your questions.
Sounds great, Nick. And I think Christina made it back on the call, so she's there as well. So we'll kind of go through some of these questions. Nothing too intense here. There's a few good ones here. And then I also just want to let everybody know, once we get through the questions, we'll open it up to a little bit of a general discussion till 8. And that'll be, you know, just about the adoption, the widespread adoption of EVs and what we think is the barriers there. So we'll invite you to unmute your camera, bring yourself on screen, and we can have a bit of a chat. We've got a few different EV experts, and we've got Nick and Christina talking as well. So we'll start off with the first question here. Comes from Randy, and he's wondering, as Tesla's production is growing with a lot of back orders, VW and others are ramping up too. So he's wondering, can Nouveau Monde keep up with demand? So that's a demand question. Are you going to be able to keep up with that demand that's out there?
You want to take this one, Christina?
Sure. So I apologize again. I'm going to keep my camera off because I don't want to lose connection again. So yeah, so there's an increase in demand from all of the automobile makers, basically. So the way it's going to work for Nouveau Monde, when we get into full production at the end of 2022, so recall that we'll produce graphite flake at a rate of 100,000 tons per year. When you spherinize, so we plan on selling 40% of that to the traditional sector, so let's say the seal making industry, and 60% we plan on pushing through the secondary process at our mill, the secondary processing, spharinizing and purifying. So when you take flake and you process it first, of course there's a lot of waste. What you'll end up with is about 35 to 40,000 tons of the anode material. So there is no way Nouveau Monde by itself can fill the need, or fill the hunger that the automobile makers have. We have built our mill in a way in which it allows us to be flexible in terms of production size. So out of our mine, again, this is based on a bankable feasibility report that we issued at the end of 2018, 100,000 tons per year. But the way in which we're going to be building our mill is going to allow us the flexibility that perhaps in the future we would be able to purchase flake from another miner, let's say, and increase our production rates and therefore increase our anode material output. So the way in which we're building things is to keep the doors open and allow us flexibility. On our own, we will be the largest producer in the Western world, but the demand that's coming in the EV space and the anode space is so large that there is not one producer that can supply an automaker. So, we're anxious to get to market, but the market is so large that there's room for a few of us. So, it's a good question, because often in meetings with investors or, sometimes institutional investors, although they're a bit more savvy, they worry about competition. So what I say is that we're not really too worried about competition, because the demand that is to come allows room for several players. So I don't know if that answers your question, but basically the more we could produce, the more they would take. They would take it all.
They're going to take everything you can get. So
Yeah.
Give us. And just a little bit of a follow-up on that. He's wondering if there's been any other interests from other peer U.S. EV OEMs besides Tesla, similar to Rivian, Akrimoto, Workhorse. Is it just Tesla that's kind of eating up the U.S. market there, or have you had some other nibbles from some other players?
I'd say in the U.S. Conversations that we have, I'd say mostly Tesla. The important conversations we're having are with especially European battery makers. The Europeans don't really want to rely on China going forward. No, well, nobody does, but Europeans are pretty avant-garde. There's a lot of graphite mining that comes out of Africa as well. But again, when you're thinking about sustainable or ethically mined or produced battery anode material, you're not really finding it from China or from Africa. So, especially in the US and in Europe, whereby they want to source something that is reliable, cost efficient. Our cash costs, I didn't talk about the economic metrics, but economically we will be one of the lowest cost producers in the space. So that's really important. So in the US, I'm not sure if there's any other player besides Tesla. We have been speaking to a few of the majors in Europe. So I can't say any names, of course, come with a disclaimer, but everybody knows that, there's the BMWs are in Europe, the Volkswagens are in Europe, the Audi group belongs to Volkswagen. So, a lot of key players in Europe as well. And we've spoken to some battery makers, because, we can sell flake, we'll be able to sell spherical graphite, we'll be able to sell it purified. So depending on what the need is, we can have offtake partners anywhere along that supply chain that I showed you guys earlier. So that's how we want to be fully integrated. And there is no other company that is fully integrated in that manner, except for BTR materials or minerals out of China. It's the only one that we know of in the world that has been successful at putting together a fully integrated business plan. And so that's the business plan that we aim to have.
That's great. So I guess they can stay in touch on your social media for some of those big announcements coming.
Yes,
And,
absolutely.
And then we'll open up after for some follow up for that. I know Randy's got some ideas there, so we'll go through a few of the written questions and then we'll open up for a little bit of follow up. So I want to get over to one of our members, Dan Vivian, had a couple questions. First, he was asking how many people will be employed at the mine eventually once you reach your full operations, and then he's wondering does the actual demo equipment is going to be used, or the same process is going to be used and scaled up. So he's wondering, is the demo equipment actually going to be used, or is it just going to be the process that you're getting and then scaling that up?
So in terms of number of employees, I don't really have the number, a concrete number for you now. Typically it's in the hundreds. A lot of it will be employing people from, of course, local communities. The project site is not remote, so there's no fly in and fly out or anything like that. We do have the First Nations group in the region, so of course we believe in diversification, and we'll be hiring First Nations members as well. So I don't have a solid number, but typical of any mining projects, it's probably over 100 at the least, I'd say. In terms of the mining equipment, I'm not certain if it's the same mining that will be the mining equipment that is used. Will it be that mining equipment that is just moved into the commercial size mill, or will they just keep running the demo plant for testing? I'm not sure, but it will be the exact same circuit. What's interesting about the micronizing and spheronizing equipment is that it comes in units. So right now we have a handful of units, and as we get up to the commercial scale of the project, if we want to grow in size, if we have a special request from a special client and they want us to increase our output, you simply need to add on units. So it's nothing complicated, and that's important, in terms of CapEx for the profitability of a mining project.
Absolutely, fantastic. So I want to go over through David Wilson's question here. He's wondering what is the waste stream like? Processing with chlorine sounds sort of scary. And have you received any pushback from some of the locals or any local organizations such as NIMBY?
So when we talk about the traditional milling, so when we're producing graphite flake out of the mine site and we're doing traditional milling, we'll be using a co-disposal system. So in essence, without getting too technical, because I can forward, the technical information later on, but the way in which we will be disposing of our waste, we'll have obviously a waste management site dedicated at or close to the milling site, whereby the wastewaters are constantly tested. At the end of the day, we don't expect to have much wastewater coming out of the site because it'll be managed and actually water recycled. So from the traditional mining standpoint, there is no concern from an environmental aspect. The chlorine actually isn't in purification, so that's at the secondary processing level, and that's once we get into the purification of the spherical graphite, so the anode material. And in fact, it's not highly intensive, chemical intensive at all, actually. Chlorine is not the worst type of chemical that you can use. Let's say if we're comparing our project to a gold project where you're leaching with acids and things that are much more polluting. And again, we'll be working with a chemical supplier that will likely will be bringing in the chemical or the chlorine, if you will, through pipeline, dedicated pipeline. That's why we are situated where we want to be situated, literally across the street. And the wastewater that will come out is the saline water that they will then in turn take back. So again, in terms of waste and disposal, there is no big environmental concern. We still have studies to do. We have not completed a feasibility study yet. Of course, feasibility study for the cost of that secondary processing. And once we get into feasibility studies, then all of the processes will be outlined further. So that's as much as I can say about it for now. So there isn't a large concern in terms of environmental safety. But of course, all of this is to come in a study that will be done by engineers and qualified people.
That's great to hear. We were definitely concerned about any of that waste material. So fantastic.
Absolutely. And well, at the end of the day, for a mining project, if there is any environmental concern, if it's something that doesn't make sense, mining projects are not given the green light unless they are safe. We don't only have to think about our waste waters or tailings, we have to think about noise pollution, air pollution, with dust, especially since we're an open pit. So, we would not be getting a green light if we wouldn't be doing things in the proper manner. So, rest assured in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, sorry, I just want to add something to what Christina said. If you want to draw a parallel with what the Chinese are doing in terms of purification, over there they use hydrofluoric acid to purify, and obviously it's a very nasty chemical, and the waste and then disposal of that chemical, for what I hear, is still problematic there in China today. If you want to know more about what they do, simply Google Washington Post graphite, 3 words, Washington Post graphite, and you'll see the investigative reporting that the journalists have done in 2016 over there. It's very nicely done. They interviewed people, you see videos, it's very, I think that that opens up the eyes of a lot of people when you see that. It needs to change.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds like some good research to take a look at. So I've got one last formal question, and then we'll kind of wrap up this formal part before we open up a little bit more dialogue. And this one's from Matthew Eglin. And I also want to say a big thanks to Matthew and Raymond from the EV Council of Ottawa, as they were helping to connect us with Christina and Nouveau Monde. So thanks so much. I think they'll come on camera in a little bit and chat a bit about EVs, and feel free to share any of your links, guys, as far as your website, and they've got a monthly call going as well, which is great to jump on. So one last question from Matthew on the formal side of things here. He says, does the fact that VW is buying carbon offsets for their EVs and is actively seeking to reduce GHGs all the way back to the mine mean that you can sell your products at a green premium? So I was wondering if there'll be a bit of a premium on your product.
Yeah, I think that, again, because I'm not privy to those conversations, they're high-level conversations, but I'm going to assume that they will be selling at a premium, definitely, because again, I don't know of any other mining company that has plans to sell a carbon neutral anode material. I don't know of, and I believe there is no other mining company that will be producing an anode material out of an all-electric operation. So all of that combined certainly can allow us at least an open door to asking for a premium on our product, definitely.
Fantastic. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, they one of the company there, one of the OEM, or maybe more than one in Europe, has said publicly that they will, and I think that they have already started issuing sustainability scores to the suppliers. I don't remember if it's VW or BMW, but they said it publicly. So, if they are willing to give sustainability scores to, it means something to them. It means that, okay, well, the supplier has to compete not only on price, but also on sustainability. It's at the same level. That's what they said publicly.
That's great. Nice to hear that, that progress being made. So I just had one quick last question before we end the formal part. We did kind of gloss over the investing. If there's some people out there who do want to invest, what are the best ways for them to do that? Is that on the Quebec Stock Exchange, or should they just go onto your website and follow the links? What are some of the ways to invest in Nouveau Monde?
Yeah, so well, we trade on the TSX Venture. So our ticker is N as in Norman, or Nouveau rather, NOU on the TSX Venture. So that's where you'd find us. And whichever way, I mean, some people manage their own trading accounts, and some people have a stockbroker, but we're easy to find. We also have a US-based listing on the OTCQX, and we also trade in Europe on the Frankfurt Exchange. But if anybody really has any more questions, I typically expect people to do their due diligence. And for those of you that are interested in maybe one day investing but want to track our progress, which is logical and makes sense, for anyone new to the story, they can reach out to me through email, and maybe you can post my email address, Nick, or call me on my cell phone. That's fine as well. It's there for everyone to dial up, and you can maybe post my cell phone number as well, Nick, in the chat room, and I can guide you and send you more information as well. And you can also send me your email addresses, and I can add you to our news feed. So we do have Twitter, we do have Facebook, but if you want to get the news as it hits the markets, then I can add you to our news release feed, and it'll be timely that way.
Fantastic. So we'll get into a little bit of discussion here, but before we wrap up the formal part, I just want to say another big thanks to Christina for coming on. Great presentation. Really, really great to hear some of the stuff going on. We've got your info in chat there with everything, and I also want to say thanks to your colleague Nick Tremblay for coming in. So we'll kind of hit pause on the record here because we're going to get that out to the masses, but we'll stay on the Zoom room here.